So, this is the new show on Apple TV Plus, Severance, and watching episode 1, about 10 minutes in, we are introduced to the Severance Center. Now, this show is absolutely incredible, so I highly recommend it for so many reasons, which I have at this point finished all of Season 1. They just had the series finale the other day, and in retrospect, all this makes a lot more sense with the maps and the mazes, etc. Anyway, but as I was watching this episode, the point of this video is this awesome wanna that starts right here. It piqued my interest because it's such a great way to enter a world, but it's also a fairly simple set for how effective it is in relation to the story, which makes it that much more of a beautiful and elegant and cool design. Sometimes you don't need, flourishes everywhere and little bits and pieces. Sometimes you just need a really effective design that makes perfect sense for the story. So I've been writing non-stop the last couple of weeks, so I decided to take a break, switch gears, and try to figure this set out real quick and do a quick build in Sketchup. So I don't know, maybe Dave's students can learn from it, or if you like Sketchup and you want to see a little run through, or you want to see how a set like this would be realized in stage on production. I should say I did not work on this show, so I don't have any of this information. I'm just working from whatever visuals I can get and my experience and understanding of set construction and art direction in film and TV. I did work on For All Mankind Season 1 and 2, so if you do want to see some cool stuff I've built, go check that out. Oh, that's not a green screen shot, by the way. But anyway, let's enter the main set for Severance in macro data refinement, and let's get to work. So, let's get started. So first, I know it's all 90-degree turns, so if we count his paces, we can get this kind of grid, starting from the trash can cut here. So if we take these numbers, take this shape, plug it into SketchUp, make it a 5-foot hallway just for standard, we get this shape, and we get this path, which lands in the main set for macro data refinement. And if this set exists in the middle of the hallway, we know this doorway has to exist as well. So if he's coming from the lobby before the trash can cut, there would be a doorway here, but we'll figure that out later. But for now, let's start with the main set, because we know it's right in the middle. And we have all these beautiful visuals and see how everything's so symmetrical. So I'm actually going to include the clocks, and I'm going to include all the clocks and everything in the build just to make sure we have that symmetry. But for now, I'm just going to start with 8x8 flats, 8x8s and 4x4s going on. For PS designers, if you're just starting out, please work with 2, 4, and 8-foot increments, just because, when you get to the point that you have a $5 million construction budget, great, go crazy, make things 9'3" and 7/16. But when you're starting out and you're on zero budgets and zero time, make it easy on yourself, make it easy on your carpenters, make a nice, clean, simple design that's effective, and then your producers will love you, they'll bring you back, you'll get hired again, then you'll get to do more crazy stuff. But for now, we're seeing that this is actually looking pretty good. So if we plug it into the hallway layout, and you know what, it's starting to take some good shape. So we're doing something right here. Maybe the scale's off a little bit, but let's plug the desk in, and boom. We're seeing that symmetry, we're getting everything in alignment. The space does still seem too big to me, so I'm thinking maybe that's a scaling issue, but we'll figure it out later. Let's get to the hallways to see how they work. We can see everything's in 5 and 6-foot banks because of the tiles, and also everything's in a grid, so we can assume it's all in squares, so we'll do 6x6 and 5x5 and center the lights. This is about the time that I realize I'm a plonking idiot and the banks have to be the same size. So let's start over again, because it needs to be a 6x5 and a 5x5, so we get the lights the same slit, but then a different width. Here. So now, on this hallway we can tell it's a 5-bank hallway, so we're just going to make a component 5x5 and just work that down, and then we can make as many hallway shapes as we can, plug in some doors, count the lights, count the panels, and we get this. Now at the trash can cut, I think this is actually a different set. That transition element right there with the overlap, and also there's a plug on the wall at the bottom that I think you see in several, I think it's used for an extension cord and other things later on. I think it's a transitional set piece, but we'll get to that later. Anyway, the rest of the hallway path follows this. If we just keep counting lights and counting his panel, yada yada yada, we get to this little tricky little curve that he follows, which actually is a nice little trick, because it actually just is one hallway that he just lands in again as he walks into the set. So now we have the set figured out and we have the hallway figured out, but what we have to do now is combine them because we know they're in the same world. Now I was saying I thought this space was a bit big, and we can see that it is now, but it's close. So if we scale it down from 8-foot to 6-foot walls, boom, here we go. And now it's actually starting to look really nice and pretty damn close. So, you know, from the trash can cut all the way around through the hallways, we land in this space. But in the real world, we would still have this opening over here, which when he's walking down that initial hallway would be here. But that's also when he looks down at his hand and finds tissue. So he's distracted. So maybe we just don't see that doorway, but it's there. I still think this is a separate set entirely. But for the argument of this all being in one world, in one space, for the layout purposes, let's include the door there. So that means we have to go back to the start at the lobby. So in comparison, the lobby is actually a nice, simple little contained set. It's basically just a box with a drop ceiling on top of it and 2 hallways. So, you know, quick little sketch out, quick little layout, we can start building, and we can scale it around. You know, of course, I think I built these walls too wide to begin with, and then scaled it back down, and you get, when you start to really see the shape of it, then you see it come together, and you go, okay, this is looking pretty close. So then let's talk about the ceiling. We did a 2x4 grid and a 6-inch perimeter reveal there, and it ended up being just little, not enough. So when I start looking at how the two relate to each other, yes, I know they're the wrong hallway pieces, but just to see how they relate, we start to see, yeah, it really needs to have that 1-foot reveal, so scale it down, and this is actually looking quite good now, especially when we look at the transition. So how do we get from the elevator to the rest of the world? Through this corner. So the thing that works here is that we get this shape, if that's true. Now the only problem would be that I think these are 3 completely different sets still, for more and more reasons we go. Like to get that shot we need this world of wild, and that happens in a lot of other places throughout the set. So if we really start to look at this journey that he goes through, you'll see in the transition when they go from around this corner, it's actually 2 shots, but they kind of pause there, which could imply that there's a lot more hallways that he goes through and we just kind of jumped forward in the path. But for argument's sake, for this layout and everything, for this map, let's just assume it is in step, time for time, his journey from the elevator all the way to his desk right here, which gives us this overall shape and this overall layout for a map. Now, of course, there are some mistakes. There should be an extra row of panels in the main set down here, but overall, it looks pretty good. Scale's pretty good. Everything's matching quite nicely. So, you know, for an overall set, I think this is pretty good. Definitely, I think it's 3 separate sets, but just for argument's sake right now, we're just going to do it as one map and one set build. So I think a set like this, you're looking at probably in the ballpark of 175 to 250,000, because probably maybe a little more. But you know, all the tile, all the carpet, everything has to be perfect and lined up over long distances. So everything's got to be flat. So you have to build a deck, because no soundstage anywhere is level enough for a set like this. You have to build a deck that's dead level, then add all your rigging and pipes on top of that, not just for the ceiling panels, but for all the ungodly amount of electric and grip that needs to come in, because every single light opening needs a light source. And add light control, which you have even more than this, because every single light source would have to have full wraparound control. So I mean, like, you know, you get to a point where, depending on how long you're shooting, the cost of this could be huge. But for an overall little map and an overall little set, I think this is pretty close. So yeah, let me know what you think. Cheers.